Welcome one and all to episode 23 of Titan Teatime. I'm one of your hosts, Petter, and with me I got my co-host, James.
Hello!
And in this episode, we have two very special guests, Momtaku and Luna of the YouHearBigGirls podcast.
Hi!
Thanks for having us.
This is our first ever guest episode on Titan Teatime. We're probably not going to have a lot of them, but we figured, maybe if we feel like it at some point, we might have some guests on. And I figured I wanted to kind of repay you guys since you've already had both me and James on your show. This is something I definitely wanted to do. And obviously the manga is over now. There's no more chapters to discuss anymore. So the topic in today's episode will be basically we're going to all kind of share our stories about how we were introduced to Attack on Titan, how we became fans of the series, and also kind of what it's been like, being part of the fandom and reading the chapters every month. And also about our podcasts, the two podcasts that we've been running. For anyone who doesn't know, for some reason, although I don't imagine there's many, Momtaku and Luna also have been running another Attack on Titan podcast called YouHearBigGirls, which I think started about a year before Titan Teatime. And basically we'll be talking about what it's been like to run these podcasts that we've been doing for the past 2/3 years, or almost 2/3 years that they've been going on. And one last thing before we get into the discussion. This is going to be a pretty open discussion, I imagine, but one last thing. I will just give a spoiler warning for anyone who's here that hasn't read the Attack on Titan manga, since at this point I feel like spoiler warnings might be worth doing since we're not talking about a specific chapter. But we might potentially be mentioning things from throughout the series, so you have been warned. So, Luna, would you like to start by sharing a little bit about how you were introduced to Attack on Titan?
I think the first time was probably through a BuzzFeed video where people were reacting to it, and I just kind of went on with my life. And I think a year later, there was the Irish version of BuzzFeed, called Facts, which doesn't exist anymore either. They reacted to it, and they were banging along to the opening, and the next day I was humming in it, and I was like, what song am I humming? I don't recognize this. It's it's from that video I watched. Okay, I guess I'll give that anime a shot, and then, I got hooked. And I think that was 2016, so I was pretty late to the anime game.
Oh, interesting. I see.
Yep.
And what made you want to read the manga then?
Actually, I didn't want to. I wanted to wait because I thought, these 3D MG scenes, they're so amazing. There's no way that, on paper that is conveyed just as awesomely. So I really wanted to wait for the anime season 2, but then I saw it had been a while since season 1 had released. And I was like, do I want to wait any longer? So I think I held out for 7 months, and then I was like, nah, I'm going to give in. And then I read up all the way.
So you read up on the manga before season 2?
Yes, I did. And I think they were at the owl reveal.
Oh yeah.
That was the first chapter I had to wait for months and months.
Gotcha. So that was probably the very beginning of 2017 or something like that?
Yeah, around there.
Cool. And Momtaku, what's your story?
My Attack on Titan origin story was November 2013. My daughter comes to me and says, hey, Mom, there's a new anime. You want to watch it with me? And she was just at that point getting back into fan art and cosplay, and Attack on Titan was everywhere in the fan art and cosplay community. So December 2013, we sat down and we watched the episodes as they were coming out, and I got obsessed. And it's happened before. This is not Momtaku's first obsession, but it was I fell hard for the story because of the mysteries in it. So I rushed out, ordered all the manga volumes, and I think I was current. At that point, we were in the Female Titan arc, the manga was in chapter 53, I think. I read as much as I could, and then I just wanted to talk about it, and my daughter was like, you know what, Mom, you should get on Tumblr. And I'm like, what's Tumblr? And she set me up an account called Momtaku, and she thought that would be a great name. And yeah, so that was January 2014, and I lurked for a few months and then started blogging regularly in April of 2014 about Attack on Titan.
Wow. That was your whole origin story for your username, for
Everything.
Tumblr.
Fandom. Everything. Sorry.
Wow.
Yes, the whole
Whoa.
origin story.
I mean, that's really cool, I think.
You probably said it before, but not that I've heard. But knowing that it was your daughter who gave you your username is really, really cool, I think.
Yeah.
I never thought that would be the origin for that.
Yeah. We sat at the kitchen table. She was doing fan art, and I would go onto Tumblr just to kind of like look at and see what people were saying about her art. She was, I was a proud mom, and I wanted to see what was going on there. And, when I explained to her all my worries about joining Tumblr, I thought it was a very young platform. I thought I would be out of place. I wanted to make sure people were aware that I was an older fan. I didn't want there to be any confusion. And she hit on Momtaku, and she says, do you like it? And I was like, yeah, I think I can live with it. So.
I see. Actually, a question to both of you, Momtaku and Luna. How much into, like, Japanese pop culture were you, like weeb stuff, when you became fans of Attack on Titan?
For me, I had just taken like a couple-year break from anime and manga. So this was kind of something that pulled me back in.
I see. So you had been there, but I see.
Yeah. I was a big weeb in my teens, and I still played like Japanese video games, but I stepped away from anime and manga mostly because I think the series that I grew up with were over. So I didn't really get into anything new until Attack on Titan happened. So
Nice. And what about you, Momtaku?
So in my case, I mean, I'd always seen the Miyazaki movies. I knew what Cowboy Bebop was. I had some experience with animation and anime, but I would say it was in the early 2000s when my daughter was watching like Hamtaro and Pokemon, and she just got really into anime. She was young. And, I started going to Japanese websites to buy the toys. And as she got older, just peripherally, I would start to watch what they were watching. And I would say 2009, though, is when I really started to see anime as something that I could enjoy as a grown-up, that it wasn't Hamtaro and Pokemon. It was, there were titles there that and the animation style and the storytelling style that it would really appeal to me. So I would say 2009 is when I started watching anime for myself. So I was really primed 5 years later to, get completely obsessed. But prior to Attack on Titan, I definitely had watched more like slice of life and, much lighter anime. This is my first time delving into, I always forget, is it shonen or seinen? I don't know which one Attack on Titan is, but it's the first time I saw like a child get crushed and a mother get eaten on television in an anime.
Yeah. So did you or did you not know what otaku was when your daughter gave you the Momtaku name?
Yeah, I knew what an otaku was. I mean, I don't know that I knew it. I don't know that I was like completely convinced, or I don't know that I ascribed to that culture, but I thought it was a nice way to, even though I'm not an otaku per se.
Oh, you're an otaku. You're an you're an Attack on Titan otaku.
I am definitely now. At the time, I was not.
At the time, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like definitely anyone who's hosted a consistent Attack on Titan podcast for like as long as the four of us have, I think, yeah, we can't get away from being otakus.
Okay, I am officially, yes. So I was not an otaku. I have grown into the role very much. As I look around my office, which is literally papered with fan art and anime merch. Yes.
You have a beautiful office. I've seen pictures. It's
beautiful.
It's amazing.
It's definitely otaku.
Right. Yeah. So James, tell us about how you got into Attack on Titan.
So I actually studied and lived in Japan without much of an anime background. So for the longest time, I actually was against watching any sort of Japanese animation except for the Miyazaki films, which I adored. When I was younger, I watched Dragon Ball Z and a bit of Naruto, but I didn't really get into it because I saw the other people who were into it, and I was like, I don't want to be like that, which is very rude and wrong of me to say. But at the time, when you're in middle school and transitioning to high school, it's kind of, you have an image you want to keep up, and that was not the image I wanted to aspire to. So anyway, but I still was very interested in Japanese culture, so I kept doing with that and lived in Japan for a time. When I got back and I started going to college, I noticed that my Japanese wasn't wasn't where I wanted to be, and I didn't have the constant Japanese around me like I did in Japan.
Of course, yeah.
So okay, what am I gonna do? But so about a year after I got back, I got to figure out something, and so that ended up forced me to watch anime. And now I say forcing. I mean, I think I was somewhat curious. Now I have said before that Attack on Titan was like the first one, but thinking back on it, I think there was three, and I can't remember which one I did first. But I watched them back to back to back because I got hooked. I think the first one may have been Death Note, and I watched that via YouTube, like episode after episode.
Oh,
back
wow.
back when YouTube wasn't, doing the copyrights too much. So I was able to watch that.
I think I did the same.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad I have a partner in arms. So I think first one was Death Note, and it was either Attack on Titan or Brotherhood next. But either way, or Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood to clarify.
Right.
But either way, those three got me hooked into anime and wanting to explore other types of shows. But I would watch other shows and try to get into it, but none of them were able to entice me and interest me as much as those three, particularly Attack on Titan, with just at the time it's cliffhangers and out of nowhere reveals, almost even from a Western storytelling point, unexpected way of going about the story. The main character, he dies within the first few episodes, not really, and so it was really fascinating for me, and it really got my imagination going. And leading up to where I am now, I waited a few years for season 2, expecting it because I realized that I was about a year late. This is in 2014 that all this happened. So I was about a year late to the actual premiere for the show, but I was expecting that maybe season 2 would come out in a few months, maybe a year or so. But clearly my wait was much longer, as I'm sure everyone else did. So season 2 drops, and what year does season 2 drop again? Was that 2000?
It was the first half of 2017.
2017. So that drops, and I eat it all up, adore it. But afterwards, I was like, I can't handle another 7 or how many years? 5 years? How many years that was? I can't handle that. So I went to the manga, binged what I could. I know I was reading in the Marley arc, incredibly confused, thinking I had missed so much. And actually, Crunchyroll at the time had the manga, but it only carried up to a certain point. Like, it had the most recent one, but if you go far enough back, it just drops. So there's like chapters 50 to 70 are like just gone for some odd reason. So I was able to see like the end of the Return to Shiganshina arc and then go into Marley arc. So there's a bit of the government arc that I just totally lost. So that was really a treat to see in season 3.
Oh, like the uprising arc?
Yeah.
Oh.
So that was kind of in the dark for me going into season 3. So I was a little confused, and when I started reading the Marley arc, I thought I had missed some important stuff in those previous chapters because these characters I had no idea. So it really got me confused. But I eventually figured out what was going on and kept going, and obviously that wasn't the case. Like everyone was confused.
Basically,
for the most part.
Yeah.
But I got up to, I can't remember exactly where I caught up. I know I saw Sasha die.
Oh.
It may have been around there that I caught up to.
Sasha died, wasn't that in like 2018 or something?
That makes sense.
I think so.
Yeah.
Like May or around there of 2018, if I recall.
I may have waited after season 2. I mean, clearly I don't have the best memory, but I may have waited a bit, hoping for season 3, and then was just like, forget it. So I think that's the extent of my backstory with Attack on Titan.
Nice. And as for me, I remember the first time I heard the name Attack on Titan. I still remember it vividly, even though at the time it didn't mean anything for me. It was the summer of 2014, and some friend of mine who wasn't like a super close friend, but like I guess we were hanging out in the same circles. he mentioned Attack on Titan as this really awesome new show. I didn't even understand it was an anime at the time, I think, and I didn't know anything. Like, Attack on Titan to me just sounded like, for some reason I thought of like the moon that's called Titan. Is it like a Jupiter, one of Jupiter's moons is called Titan?
Saturn's.
Saturn. Okay, yeah. So I thought it was like some sci-fi show. Like, I probably had like a live action thing in mind. That was like, yeah, completely different thing what it actually was. But I didn't like actually do anything about it then. I just remember hearing about it then. And at the time I wasn't even into like anime and things like that. It wasn't until the fall of 2014. So yeah, it wasn't later in that same year. So in the fall of 2014 that I very quickly became a weeb of sorts. I think I had the curiosity about anime and stuff since high school, but it wasn't until my first term at the university that I started actually watching some anime shows, like for real. Like, it wasn't Pokemon or Digimon or stuff like that. And I actually started with Death Note 2, which was kind of my gateway into anime as a whole.
Whoa, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah. But then it was in January of 2015, so after like a few months of exploring anime and stuff, that I watched Attack on Titan for my first time. And I was hooked immediately. I still remember really vividly just how I reacted, like, after I'd seen the first episode, because I remember I was really intrigued by the story, so I wanted to keep watching like the next episode, but I was so kind of emotionally kind of just overwhelmed by the first episode. The first time I saw it, I had to like I remember I had to like go sit down in my bed, like with my head between my knees, just kind of breathe.
Yeah, I think we can all relate to that feeling.
Yeah. So that was a strong opener, and I got hooked on it right away. However, I didn't start reading the manga until, because I still wasn't into manga really, so I didn't start reading the manga until pretty much right after season 2 had finished airing. That was when I decided that, yeah, no, I'm not gonna wait for season 3, at least not the way I waited for season 2. So that's when I started reading the manga. I started buying the volumes, and I caught up pretty much exactly kind of the shift between Return to Shiganshina and Marley. I think it was pretty much right at the shift there, which was a pretty good place, I think, to catch up.
So is Attack on Titan the first manga you've ever read, or had you read other mangas?
I had read like the original Zelda manga at some point,
Okay.
a couple of years before that, which it was very strange. But no, like it was like the first like manga that I read, I guess, for real, sort of. And it was kind of also my gateway into manga, because right now, like, I have a decently sized manga collection at this point of other series and stuff that I'm very happy. And it was so yeah, Attack on Titan was definitely my gateway into that.
My first manga that I read was Oran High School Host Club, if you can imagine. So
Nice. I've seen the anime adaptation of that. I haven't read the
Yeah.
manga though.
it was in the house and I read it, so it was fun.
Nice. As for getting involved in the fandom and stuff, I guess since I was already talking, I can share that a little bit. I didn't really get into the fandom at all until after our first episode of Titan Teatime. Like, I think pretty much right
Really?
after
Oh,
then.
really?
Yeah. Like, even though I was a big fan, I considered Attack on Titan to be like my favorite story, period, like out of any mediums. I don't anymore, but I did for a long time. And even then, I didn't really get involved in the fandom at all. My way into the fandom, however, was after our first episode of Titan Teatime. I kind of felt that maybe I should try to talk about this with more people, kind of broaden my horizons a little bit more on different takes and see kind of what the fandom is like. So where I ended up was I was watching videos on YouTube, kind of just people talking about Attack on Titan, and I found Andrew Allstar's channel and his videos. I don't know if he does videos anymore, or does he only do streams these days?
Yeah, his channel got deleted.
Right, but I found that channel anyway, and I kind of enjoyed it. So and I found he had a Discord link to his Discord channel in the video description, so I joined that, and that server was basically my first place, like with the fandom, kind of, where I talked about the series with a larger amount of people. And I think you were in that too, Momtaku, weren't you?
I was. Was it the Titan? Was it Titans on Tour, or was it the actual Andrew All Star server?
It was the actual Andrew All-Star server.
Okay. Yeah, I was. I've been in Andrew's servers, I would say, since 2018, since before we started our podcast, or right after we started our podcast. So, yeah, a couple years ago, 3 years ago.
Right. And yeah, I must have joined that in July or August of 2019. So yeah, I guess that's where you and I kind of started talking a little bit. And I didn't, since I hadn't been involved in the fandom at all until at some, like, couple of, like, just like 2 weeks or something after we uploaded our first episode of Titan Teatime, I didn't know of your podcast, obviously, since I hadn't really explored the fandom and stuff. So it wasn't until I think we must have interacted somehow on the server that I learned about your podcast as well, and I think you learned of ours.
And you still stay basically on Discord. You're not out on Reddit or any other places, are you, Petter?
No. I tried Reddit, like, back in December or January, so relatively recently, but I wasn't ever able to get into it, really. So, no, I stick to Discord.
Well, my origin into the fandom is actually very boring because before Titan Teatime, I was just trying to keep this inside myself, all my thoughts and everything, and I would try to talk to my sister, who is also into the anime but hadn't caught up with the manga, try to talk to her in a way that wasn't spoiling anything, but I could still express my excitement and my bewilderment and whatnot. So it was nice having the podcast eventually, and I guess we'll talk about that later, but it wasn't until Petter joined the You Hear Big Girls, your guys' podcast for an episode, that I realized, wait, there's other people who are talking about this. Of course there are. But even then, I was still hesitant because, I don't know, I feel like if I get into something, I start putting a lot more time into it, and then it makes me less able to do other things that I'm doing. So I was still a bit hesitant, but then I got to know you guys more, and eventually came on your guys' podcast, and that was a lot of fun, and talked to more people there. I think it wasn't really until the last chapter where I started to really go to other places and see what people's thoughts were. Actually, maybe the chapter before that as well. Just see. I even was kind of creeping on the, what is their name on Reddit?
Titanfolk?
Yeah, Titanfolk. I was creeping on them because I just wanted to see the meltdown, and it was glorious, I must say. It still is, but that was really the extent of anything. I'm kind of a loner in that way. I like to talk, but I feel like if I start talking to someone, I'm gonna get way too invested into it, and then there goes my day and my productivity.
Wow. Yeah, I did the deep dive into fandom. Like, I wanted to know what everybody was thinking. I wanted to share my theories. I wanted to read everybody else's. And it's been funny to me, like, knowing Andrew. Andrew's another of those that doesn't really want to read other theories. He doesn't want to be influenced by other people. And I don't know if it's just the different ways that people consume media. When I jumped into Tumblr in 2014, I wanted to read everything. I wanted to interact with people. I wanted to do fandom weeks. I started doing the poll. I mean, it was just like I wanted to know what everybody was thinking. And it was definitely a huge social thing for me. And maybe that's, that's what the difference is. It really became like an interactive book club, I guess. Like I joined fandom to meet other people. And I could kind of relate to what you were saying, because in my case, it was my daughter and her friends. And, they just got sick of me talking about it. And they're just like, you need to find other people to talk to about this. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting that way. Like, I'm so happy that, that we started our podcast, because it's helped me to kind of get even more invested in the series than I was before. I noticed that a couple episodes into doing Titan Teatime, I started realizing just how much better I started to understand the story, because I was now paying much more attention to the little details all over the series kind of than I was before, because doing a show online, you kind of, in a way, or at least the way I felt, was I felt a little bit pushed to do better, like to understand the story better than I had before.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, for me, it was doing the chapter polls because when you go through the chapter every month and are trying to like find out what people are talking about and what people are thinking and kind of like take the pulse in that way, like I always felt really prepared. I don't know how anyone else, like I know Andrew does his live streams where he just reads the chapter cold and comments, and you guys typically record, the evening after the chapter's release. Like I need like a week to think about it and to outline it. And I'm very jealous of people with natural talent. Like I'm not prepared to talk about it until, the chapter poll's done and all the questions are done and the options are done. And I basically know what everybody else thinks. Then I feel comfortable saying what I think, which is definitely not a good way to be.
Right. I mean, I'm kind of glad that our two podcasts have had different appeals or different focuses in a sense. Because when I learned that you guys had a podcast, which, Titan Tea Time was even smaller then, obviously, than it is now. It's still not huge, but it was even smaller then. And I was like, oh shit, there's already someone doing sort of what we're doing. Like, who are we to do this now when there's someone who's doing it for, like, many times more people than Titan Tea Time? I kind of felt a little bit kind of intimidated at first. But then I kind of realized, yeah, like, they have their Paul focus and they have guests on. I mean, those are some really cool additions, but Titan Tea Time doesn't have that. And I think, well, at least one thing that it's kind of pros and cons with having guests, because I used to host another podcast before Titan Tea Time where we had guests on every episode, just like you guys, and that for me at least started to become hard. Like it was a challenge to kind of schedule things with the guests and make sure everyone could coordinate all that stuff. So like I know what that's like, and I know that can be quite bothersome sometimes. Although at the same time, of course, it's fun to get more people involved, to get different opinions on things that you hadn't maybe considered yourself. And so in that sense, I think it's awesome to have guests and to have such a wide variety of guests as you guys have throughout the years. However, at the same time, yeah, it's so much easier. Like with just me and James, it's been so easy to just, okay, we'll record tomorrow, we'll do that, and then so scheduling recordings, first of all, really simple, and second of all, for me to edit 2 voice recordings, like 2 voice tracks, is far simpler than recording like 3 or 4. So it's like it makes editing easier too, so we can put things out faster, which obviously the proof is there. We have been putting things out faster. But and one other thing I wanted to mention that I think is another kind of good thing about not having guests, even though I don't want this to sound like I think it's a bad idea to have guests, because I absolutely don't. And in fact, I have very high respect for you to have actually been able to keep that up for as long as you have. Like that is an incredible feat, I think. However, one last thing that I think why it's kind of, well, one reason that having no guests is a good thing is that it means that you always have a conversation with someone that you're used to, kind of. This person, and we have kind of developed a dynamic that we're able to bounce off of each other in a natural way, which you can't always do with someone if it's your first time talking to that person.
I'm nodding my head aggressively. Oh. That's been very challenging sometimes.
I bet.
Dealing with technology and people we've never spoken. And we've had some guests that when we click the record button, we haven't known what country they're from, what gender they are. Like, it's just like, okay, let's see what happens.
Wow.
And early on, we just had no idea. I don't know, Luna, did you envision guests, or was that me pushing for guests?
I don't quite remember. But it's been a gamble, and sometimes it's worked out great and other times not so much. But yeah, just like Petter said, like with some guests you have a good rapport, and with others, there's just not that click. But that doesn't mean that they're not good guests. But
right, of course.
It's not always fireworks, let's say.
Right.
Well, one other thing I'll say about having guests is I think it's great marketing for the podcast. Not only is it great to hear other opinions, and then they'll show their friends, hey, look, I'm on this podcast, and kind of grows your name within the fan base along with the poll. Mm-hmm. I think it also kind of creates people. Maybe this is kind of mean to say, but they're like, oh, maybe if I listen in and express my opinions here and there, like I'll get on this podcast one day or something like that. Because no offense to
I
anybody.
mean,
I mean, come on, people are secretly trying to, put themselves up. It's just how it is sometimes.
Right.
But what I've noticed that even in, or at least especially in our Discord, there's some people who are there and they'll be like, at Luna or at Momtaku, what did you think about this chapter? And it's so funny because, I mean, look, I'm not expecting them to listen to our podcast, but clearly they're there because they think it's a way I can talk to these two.
Oh, I don't think that's true. I just think they see us there too and want to know. Oh, I guess you're right though. They wouldn't be adding us if they didn't know us.
Right.
Like it gave us visibility.
Yeah. So I and it's not a bad thing. It's just, to me, it's funny. But what I'm saying is because you had those guests, because they liked your podcast so much, they were really wanting to hear your opinions and stuff like that. So anyway, I think guests in that sense really helped the podcast. I'd say succeed as much as it did.
I'm sure it helped.
I mean, we were basically cloud chasing the past 3 years. Yeah, because like Soul has like 100,000 subscribers, so even if we only got a small percentage of, his subscribers to listen to us, it's still like a substantial amount.
Totally.
I mean, of course. Like, actually, let's talk about our podcast more from the beginning, perhaps.
Sorry, did we ever hear Luna's entry into the fandom, or?
Oh, did we miss that?
Yeah, I didn't mention it, but it's not that interesting, honestly.
But I am curious, though.
Okay, so I don't know why, but I think I was looking for fan art. I think I started to get like more attached to the series, probably because that's when I caught up right when Marley started. And at first I was very confused. I was like, what's going on? Where are we? I missed the fact that it was a time skip, a 4-year time skip, so I had no idea what was going on. And but then of course, it's like 1 or 2 chapters in, I was like, okay, this might be my jam. And yeah, I found a fan artist and she was retweeting a lot of other art as well, so I was like, okay, this is good content. And one day I decided, let me just send her a message. And we got to talking, and she invited me to a Discord server that was focused on, Attack on Titan. And that's also where I think I met Momtaku for the first time. I'm not sure.
I think so. I remember when you showed up.
Ooh.
Like, I didn't know how. Okay.
That's usually
Oh
not
my
good.
It's not bad. So I really struggle with people's Discord names with their PFPs or their handles, whatever. Like, if I can't pronounce it, I can't remember it. If I can't come up with some way of saying the word, I can't. And you showed up, Luna. I still don't know how to say it. Like, I visually recognize it, but it just, like, when you showed up, I'm looking at this username and I'm like, okay, what does this tell me about this person? Absolutely nothing. I have no idea. I don't want to say it made me suspicious of you, but I had gone through like some pretty traumatic fandom experiences like very recently. And anytime a new person showed up, I would be like, I'm naturally very friendly and I'm holding myself back from being very friendly and trying to like discern what I can from your picture and from your name and what you're talking about. And yeah, I remember it was a hard name to forget. Yeah. And I still, how do you say it? How do you say your Discord name?
Yeah, XV.
See? I couldn't even do it if I wanted to.
It's Chinese.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's based on Final Fantasy 15, so it's like Night and Moon, Noct and Luna from the main 2 from Final Fantasy 15.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So... But then, we started voice chatting in that server, and nobody could pronounce my name, so I was like, oh, crap. I was like, okay, just call me Luna then. So
that's when you became a person.
Yes.
Like, if I can't pronounce the name, you're not a person.
So that's how I became Luna, because nobody could pronounce Chinese, which I didn't take into account.
Man, so we've gotten the origin stories for both of your names in this episode.
That's amazing.
I'm so happy. So that was how you guys like got to know each other. So from there, like after you got to know each other, how come you decided to start a podcast together?
Well, we can't directly jump to that story. I have to go to the poll story first.
Yes, do it.
Do you want to tell it or should I?
We would probably tell it very differently.
Well then.
So I'll start it and then I'll turn it over to you. But when you become visible in fandom, stuff happens. You can't avoid stuff happening. And occasionally stuff would happen to me. And I'm really glad that stuff happened in 2016 and 2017 and not like 2021 on Twitter because, oh my God, that would be a disaster. At least like my fandom drama was back when people still had some amount of civility and it wasn't like mobs coming after you and whatever. But I had disgruntled some people, which I know, shocking, me disgruntling people. And it's kind of started a conversation on Tumblr about the negative effects of big name fans and how popular meta writers who have an opinion disenfranchise those that don't share that opinion. And that when they use official looking resources to promote their plot, you get where it's going. So I, of course, was horrified that I was becoming the poster child for, all the bad things that happen when people become prominent in a fandom. So I quit the poll. And I only quit it for 2 or 3 months, actually 2 months. And then I came back as part of a team because...
Yeah, but on the DL, right?
Yes, without my name attached to it. Because it's a lot of work. And I'm one of those people that when I commit to something, I commit to it. And it became, I treat it like I do a job, even though I'm not getting paid for it. And I wanted the poll to happen. So the way to make sure that happens is just to do it. I have a great team now and a great team since then, which has been great. It wasn't just me doing it anymore. It became a collaborative and it's become better because of that. But anyway, so it was in the midst of all of this drama that I met Luna.
Well, I mean, actually we had met before on another server.
Right, but you like drama, so you came.
That's
you
not
wanted
true.
to find out. It is true. You and your reality TV. Yes, you do like drama. Like you were curious about the deets. You wanted to know the details.
Okay, well, yeah, okay, let me rewind a little bit. So we were in
This was like Real Housewives of Tumblr. You wanted to know every cast member of Real Housewives of Tumblr.
So we were in a different server for a while, the Gallery server. Remember that?
Yes.
So
I remember you there too.
Okay, so that was before we really talked, but I knew you were doing the poll and I liked it because our mutual friend was also working on it. And then I also had a bad, not fandom really related experience, and I left the fandom for a couple months. And then I came back, and then we started talking about the poll, and Momtaku said, oh, let me suggest this to the team. And I was like, what do you mean the team? Like, you do the poll, right? And she was like, no, not anymore. And then she started DMing me with the deets. Wasn't me soliciting.
Okay.
So, yeah, and then we got to talking, and I think we shared everything but, or she shared everything but her social security number with me, which was like, okay, I guess this lady likes to talk, was my first impression. And that's how our friendship started, over a Tumblr attack post.
Over Tumblr drama.
Wow.
Yeah. But at the time, you were saying about how when you did your podcast, you were not aware of us, and then that bothered you. Well, when we started ours because Cast of the Titans was happening, and we thought we could do it better. So we had absolutely no shame.
What was that thing you mentioned?
Cast of the Titans was doing a podcast.
They were
Okay, I don't think I've ever heard of that.
the Shingeki no Kyojin subreddit. Yeah, they had a podcast.
I see. Was it similar? Was it also like talking about the new chapters every month thing? I see.
It was a chapter podcast, and our first conversation about our podcast was, do you listen to theirs? And I said, I've never made it through a whole episode, which is really rude to say, and maybe you should cut that. But I mean, I actually did enjoy their podcast. It was basically, 4 guys and not a lot of planning, just reacting and laughing and joking. And yeah, it just wasn't how I would do it. So,
Gotcha.
And I'm a big believer in, if you're not getting the content that you want, make it yourself. So
Absolutely.
that's what we did.
Nice. Did they stop? I assume they stopped for some reason.
I think we might have played a part in that.
I don't think so.
A little bit. A little bit, I think.
We should find out why they stopped.
Yeah, let's not.
Yes.
Let's not. It's not a good story.
Right. I just want to ask one thing though. Do you know roughly around when they stopped? Because I've never heard of them, so I'm assuming it's a while back.
Yeah, a couple of episodes in, like a couple months after we started, they stopped. And
Okay, I
I
see.
think they were trying to get back, like, recently, like, things were good again, so, but I don't know. Have you heard anything about that, Momtaku?
They tried. I mean, I'm still in their Discord server too, and they did try to get it together. And I've been pushing them to, because I've never been the kind of person that, we're doing it so you can't. I've always wanted, if people want to make their own polls, make their own polls. If you want to start a podcast, start a podcast. Like, I don't view it as competitor. I view it as, oh, there's more cake for me to eat. Everybody's making a cake now. This is great. We
Yeah.
have more cake. So I think we tried to be encouraging to them. We had most of them on the podcast as well. And
Like, even, like, old members, like,
yeah, even their former members. We've tried to,
and Reiko and Puppet were regulars there. They're regulars here, so,
yes.
or, well, here, over at our podcast.
Right, exactly. Over at YouHearBigGirls. Yeah, that's interesting though.
Yeah, so we started doing the poll together and talking, and yeah, the podcast was just like a spur of the moment kind of thing. Like, we brought it up. I think I brought it up, like, very slyly, like, hey, have you ever listened to, like, a cast on Titan? And that was, and she replied with, no, but I've always wanted to do a podcast. And I was like, oh, great, so did I.
Nice.
And that was June 2016, and we started recording in July.
Wait, no, not 2016.
2017
I mean,
or 18?
18.
18.
18, right?
Yeah, 18, yes.
Oh, you're right. I can say that again so we can edit it. Or you can say what date that was.
We can just leave it in because you and numbers.
Well, actually, I was just looking. They stopped at 109. So we started at 107. So
Yeah.
they stopped at 110.
So yeah, really a couple months after.
Gotcha. So it was just kind of a spontaneous thing then, I guess.
Very spontaneous.
Although you had still been doing things in the fandom before that together.
Yeah, we did the poll.
Right.
Well, but not even that long. You
No.
didn't join the poll until
105.
okay, 105. It was me, you, and Cash.
And 107 was our first podcast.
It was quick.
Cool.
Have you guys ever met in real life?
No, we have not.
No.
And how did you guys meet in person? What's your origin story?
I guess you could start it quite far back, although
Yeah,
initially we initially interacted briefly at a Zelda forum back whenever was that?
gosh, 2015 maybe?
Yeah, probably around there. We played Mafia together, like you gotta deceive each other and stuff, and find out who's the bad guys. We played those sorts of games in like text threads back in 2015 for a little while. Although we never really got to know each other then. I just remember, James's username from back then. It wasn't really anything more than that.
Same.
And then at the beginning of 2019, I started a podcast network of sorts, together with Steven, who was on the first 10 episodes of Titan Teatime, and another guy called Chase. And it started with a Zelda podcast, and then Steven, James, and Chase started a Fire Emblem podcast as well. So it was kind of starting to be and I had a movie podcast very briefly with another guy on there. So it was kind of like the idea at the time was kind of to build this podcast network, with a bunch of different podcasts on it. And so obviously I was a big fan of Attack on Titan at the time. And well, I guess I should also say that James and I, even though we were both part of this podcast network, since James was on the Fire Emblem podcast, he and I didn't really know each other that well then. I mean, we had talked a bit, obviously, since we were sort of on the same bigger project, but we hadn't really talked much. But then in July of 2019, I had the idea to start an Attack on Titan podcast, since I was just dying to kind of to talk about it with people, since I didn't know too many others who read it and who were really into it. I had been able to get Steven into it earlier that same year. And so I talked to him about it, and he was down to try that. And then I also learned that James was into Attack on Titan. So I decided to ask him if he wanted to join in too. So that was kind of how we started our Titan Teatime podcast. And really, at the beginning of that, James and I didn't really know each other very well.
Not at all. We're kind of strangers, just talking to each other and learning about each other.
You had guested on the Zelda podcast on one episode prior to that. Mm-hmm. So we had at least talked once before.
Right.
But it was really, like, not that much. It was just really for one relatively short podcast recording before that. So we hadn't really gotten to know each other. And that was still where we were at when we started doing Titan Teatime together. So I think it's kind of funny how... Well, first of all, I'm really happy that it worked out. Like, that we have been able to kind of create this, well, if I dare say it myself, kind of fun dynamic or something. We have, like, the way we are able to talk or whatever. And it's also kind of fun to think of it in the way that our friendship is kind of very large portion of it has been recorded kind of from the beginning.
That's true.
Oh, that's cool. So literally listening to the podcast of you two talking, or the Titan Teatime, is like kind of following your friendship journey as well.
Basically, yeah. Really, because, I mean, yeah, we chat and stuff between recordings, but we don't do voice calls and stuff like that a whole lot. I mean, it has happened, but it's not too often that we do that if we're not recording. So really, a very large portion of our friendship is on our podcasts. So I think that's kind of fun, and I'm really glad it worked out. And that, yeah, because really it could have gone really any direction, since we didn't know each other at the start, but it just kind of worked. So I was very happy for that.
Here's my version.
Yes.
I was with a group of guys doing a website/podcast called The Virtual Boys. This is about Nintendo stuff. We were so excited, and we had a lot of opinions that we wanted to get out there, so we started doing that. And we had a little bit of growth, nothing crazy. Then we decided to rebrand our name for whatever reason. I think it was because we wanted to shift focus to maybe a little more broader in the Nintendo sphere with what kind of content we were putting out. So we changed our name to The 10 City, but kept the Virtual Boys podcast name. So I was working on writing articles for the site, and then I would hop on a podcast from time to time. And so both me and the guy who kind of was the somewhat leader of it, we were both trying to figure out ways we could expand ourselves. Well, I decided to go into video content, and that's where I started making the Intensity YouTube page. And he wanted to create a network of podcasts that didn't just dive into Nintendo per se, but just all sorts of nerd culture. But I think he wanted to start out with Nintendo. As I was doing the Intensity podcast, and that started to gain some, YouTube channel, and that started to gain some success, our mutual friend was able to contact both Chase and Petter about potentially doing a podcast over on the 10 Cities kind of network. And it was basically because you guys over at the forum decided, you know what, maybe we want to go do our own thing. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, actually, brief little tangent here. I'll let you go continue that in a little bit. But
sure.
Yeah, so even before, because this was all in early 2019, like January 2019, even before that, I had been running a forum podcast kind of for that same Zelda fan forum that James and I originally interacted through, called Zelda Dungeon. On there, I hosted a forum podcast, I guess is kind of the best way to describe it. It was really for the forum members. And we talked about different Zelda-related topics, and actually a lot of anything, really. I remember there was one episode we talked about breakfast. Breakfast was the topic of that episode, for example. Like we didn't really limit ourselves. It was a lot of Zelda discussions, of course, since it was a Zelda forum, but we also had, like, we didn't limit ourselves. We could talk about literally anything we wanted to. We actually had an Attack on Titan episode.
Oh, really?
In 2018 that I talked with two of the other forum members there. And that's what I mentioned earlier in the discussion, where I used to run a podcast where we tried to have like new guests every episode. It was that podcast. And that one was running from 2016 to 2019.
Oh, wow.
Not as consistently, though. It wasn't always super active. Like, we had some hiatuses sometimes, but more or less from 2016 to 2019. And yeah, we were kind of reaching kind of the end of it. We were starting to feel that way anyway, when the beginning of 2019 came along. And that was when I was introduced to James's crew, kind of. So yeah, you can take it from there.
Right. So the person who was looking for other podcasts and trying to expand that, he knew Petter and Chase from the forum, and he kind of invited them to come over to their space. And that's basically how they started doing the Kakuriko cast, the Zelda podcast. And for a time, for a few months, it was going well, and they invited a Steven who, I guess he just found the Nintendo Discord from one of my YouTube videos, and then just became a member that way. It was rather interesting. Steven, if you're listening, we love you. Thank you so much for everything you've done.
Yes, 100%.
So it was interesting that way. I was just kind of let it be its own thing. But eventually, I think Steven and Chase came to me and said, hey, do you want to come be a guest on the Zelda podcast? So I did, or maybe I even said, hey, do you want to? Can I be a member of the, or can I be a guest sometime? I wouldn't be surprised if I did that, knowing
I can't remember. I mean, I remember it was a fun episode though, the one that you were guesting on.
It was. I think I had some strong opinions about the future of Zelda or something like that.
Probably.
Anyway, that was really the first time I talked to Petter, and then from there the Chase and Steven wanted me to do a Fire Emblem podcast with them. I was apprehensive about that because I knew it'd be more time consuming, and because it'd be a kind of they want to do a weekly thing, and I can't do that at the time. But I caved in because it's so hard for me to say no. So I did it, and I was having a good time. And then I think it was either Steven or you who came to me and asked if I would like to do Attack on Titan podcast. And I'm pretty sure I was like, yes. Like, I don't think I gave a second thought because I wanted to talk to someone about it, and I thought it'd be a really cool opportunity. So yeah, for that, and I'm so glad I decided to do that because, like Petter was saying, that was the start of our friendship, and it really helped me understand the manga as a whole better, understand certain character growths, and why Isayama is writing it the way he did. I mean, I'm sure we still have questions, but I feel like more of the mystery was unraveled for me as I went through it, and even if it's my own headcanon kind of situation. So, yeah, I think that's basically how it went down. Obviously, Titan Teatime and now Umami Manga are their own separate identities from what Chase and Steven had going on. But I guess that's kind of the natural way things went. And yeah,
right.
I'm glad we have what we did. And now I read more manga than ever before.
Right.
I bet.
Yeah, I guess briefly on that, I'm not gonna, we've already been talking for a while about this, but I'm gonna try to keep this little part short. So this podcast network, which Titan Teatime was originally a part of, which had, Zelda podcast, Fire Emblem podcast, and stuff like that. Last year in November, we decided that Titan Teatime would stay on that YouTube channel. Obviously, we also have the podcast apps and stuff, but as far as YouTube is concerned, Titan Teatime would stay on that YouTube channel, and anything else that wanted to continue would continue elsewhere. And so I was basically left in charge of that YouTube channel. And at first, I didn't really know exactly what to do. I knew I was going to continue doing Titan Teatime on there with James, but I didn't know exactly what else to do with it. But I was still kind of intrigued by, or I liked the idea of doing something more with it. So eventually, or relatively quickly, I decided that I wanted to talk about other manga series on there, kind of let manga talk be the kind of niche of the channel. Mm-hmm. And Kaguya-sama Love is War is another manga series that had kind of surpassed Attack on Titan in my head only a few months prior to this. And so I remember I wanted to do some kind of show dedicated to that, similarly to how I'd been doing Titan Teatime for Attack on Titan. And my original plan was to make it into like a talk show, kind of where I just sat with filming myself. I would be sitting in in an armchair, kind of talking about one volume per video, kind of. was my original plan. I recorded like most of that video, but then I felt like that it just wasn't working. It wasn't my thing, so I never actually did anything with that recording. So then I asked James if he wanted to cover that series with me, talk about a volume per episode, and he was down. He liked the anime adaptation of the first season that he had seen, so he already knew a little bit about what it was about. So since then we've been doing that under the name Umami Manga, which is now the YouTube channel, the new name for it. Me and another guy have been talking about the Fruits Basket manga, for example, on there already. And in about a month, James and I will start talking about the To Your Eternity manga on there, which is actually right now getting an anime adaptation, if anyone's curious. It's a really, really nice little story. James is going into it blind. I've read up to the 12th volume, but anyway, yeah. So we basically have that kind of future going on for us right now. Titan Teatime will be going on. Obviously no chapter discussions, but kind of discussions like this. But in addition to that, we will have these volume discussions for other manga series.
Yep.
And so I'm curious about the big girls. What are your plans, if any, like about the future of podcasting and whatnot?
Hey, if it's a secret right now, that's fine. But come on, give us some hints.
Right.
I wouldn't say it's a secret per se, but
That's good.
I think it's more like we really haven't had time to sit down and talk about it. I mean, I know when the guidebook, I haven't, this is hot off the press because I decided today.
Ooh.
In June, when the new guidebook comes out, I definitely want to do a podcast episode about any new information in the guidebook. I mean, definitely want to do that.
Nice.
Because I know not everybody is like, we're like hyper fans, you know, like not most people who are consuming on Twitter or wherever, they're not going to, you know, immediately go find translations of the new guidebook and find the casual fans, I think. I don't know what percentage of our audience is a casual fan, but from what I've seen on our Patreon and people I've talked to privately, we might be the only person they talk to, the only way that they're getting Attack on Titan news.
True.
So I think covering the guidebook would be a good thing to do for June.
I really like that idea.
And I think that some people aren't really ready for the series to be over yet. Like, it hasn't set in that Attack on Titan is done for some. And so maybe doing another episode like that will kind of help people come to grips that it's over, that it's done. Not that they have to. It's just it could be a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I could keep going. There's no shortage of things. I mean, I've been talking about the series for 7-8 years now, and you know, I was thinking I might want to start making a few character videos. I mean, there's a lot I could do. There's a lot I would be interested in doing. And then I know the guys on the server are really pushing Luna and I to doing a reaction to Legend of Galactic Heroes. And so I do want to find another series to transition to with Luna. Like, I don't know what that series will be yet, though. And I don't know, I don't understand the mechanics of what a live reaction would be. Like, do we read a chapter and then we discuss it, or do we watch a movie and then discuss it? I don't know how that would look. And I think some of the guys on our server that are like Legend of Galactic Heroes, like fanatics, would like to be a part of it. Like, they want it to be like a community, a server community thing. And I don't know the mechanics of it.
Right.
This is my first hobby. Like, this is the first time in my adult... I was always a reader. I was always, you know, went through a few small things that I would get hyper fixated on. But this definitely... I'd never written creatively before. I'd never written technically before. I'd never done a podcast before. I'd never done a YouTube video. But, you know, like, this was a first. This was literally my introduction to so many different skill sets. And, you know, I hate to give that up. But then again... I'm ready for a little bit of a break.
Of course.
So.
I understand.
Right.
That.
I mean, yeah.
I look at my Tumblr post count, you know, 7,000 posts.
oh wow.
Probably 4,000 asks.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just, it's been all consuming. And I think that's the way, again, my first fandom, so I don't know, but I feel like that's probably going to be my MO moving forward with things, is to be all consumed with them. It just seems to be how my brain works best. It's all or nothing, I think.
Yeah, I respect that. Definitely.
Yeah, so we are still considering things. Definitely, like, the anime will be a thing, and the guidebook apparently.
Surprise!
I didn't know about that either, so.
Oh.
I said hot off the press. Like, I literally decided this morning.
Oh, yeah.
I just forgot to tell you.
Yeah, well, she didn't tell me, so in between this morning and recording.
Wow. Well, you heard it here first.
Yes, Legend of the Galactic Heroes. I do want to cover, but it's also, I feel like, similar in ways to Attack on Titan, that I wouldn't mind something like airy, breezy, like easy to digest for a difference to focus on.
Right.
Yeah.
I can understand that. Actually, that's something like that I've really been enjoying with Maya and James's reading of Kaguya-sama Love is War, because that's that's a romantic comedy, very silly at times, but at the same, obviously it's got depth to it as well. Which, I mean, if it didn't, I probably wouldn't enjoy it, but it's nothing like Attack on Titan, and I think for me anyway, it's been a very fresh kind of difference.
That one's actually on my list. Like, I still haven't even finished season 2 of the anime yet, but I'm really looking forward to when I do, then I get to listen to your podcast.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm looking
Great.
forward to that.
Sweet.
No, well, and it is interesting because Attack on Titan and Kaguya-sama are just really entirely different dynamics, but it's fun to have that kind of different takes and different thoughts. I mean, one second we're talking about kind of the philosophical implications of Attack on Titan, and the next we're gushing how cute Chika and Kaguya are in Kaguya-sama. So, I guess I kind of do that with Mikasa and Annie and all that, but still, it's very different. But I'm glad we have that variety in there. So, I mean, maybe Legends of Galactic Heroes will be a good. I ended up seeing it. I don't know. It seems like it'd be a interesting show to try to do live, like live reactions, because it's long. It's really long.
Oh.
So I don't know, but I understand why people are excited for that.
It seems, I don't want to name drop, but I know at least 6 people who have encouraged us, and we don't have a huge listenership. We're not a bit, so even 6 people all agreeing on a thing that we should do seems like important or substantial.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe we should just make a Twitter poll, like, what should we discuss next?
That's not a bad idea.
We could do that, especially if we have some choices. I think if we could limit it down to maybe 3 or 4 things.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
Avatar is still on my list, on my wish list.
Ooh, I would so listen to that.
That's a pretty good one. And isn't there like new Avatar content coming?
Yeah, there's a new Netflix live action series coming, which the creators pulled out of, which...
Exactly.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But they also, I think Nickelodeon also created a new studio specifically for kind of that universe, like to make new
Yeah, oh
content
yeah, right.
for that
I heard
universe.
about that. Yeah.
So that's exciting.
Yeah.
Momtaku, have you seen Avatar?
I have. I had twice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Good.
all the way through both times.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I saw it in Dutch English. I remember in 2008 I used to pirate those episodes. Like if they leaked, I was watching them. We actually got one episode officially before the US did in the Netherlands, like dubbed and everything.
Wow.
Because you guys had Thanksgiving, so you guys skipped the weekend. So and then it allowed for Day of Black Sun Part 1 to air like before you guys. Had
Wow.
So
Interesting. But speaking of like putting out the kind of content that the listeners express interest in wanting you to make, last year when the pandemic hit and there was a month when there wasn't an Attack on Titan chapter, James and I did we reread the Marley arc and kind of did a discussion about the Marley arc for that month, since we didn't want to kind of break our streak. So we had a discussion about the Marley arc as a whole for that month's Titan Teatime episode. And that time we got at least 2 or 3 people. Obviously that's not a lot of people in the grand scheme of things, but at least, we had a handful of people who kind of asked us to do more kind of arc rereads and discussions, which obviously at the time we weren't planning on doing that since we wanted to keep doing the chapter discussions. But now that the series is over, we have planned out for like almost 1.5 year of discussions. Like
wow.
Basically, like, because, the show's going to keep going monthly, so 17 or 18 episode ideas, like discussion topic ideas we have, and a batch of those are each of the arcs kind of reread and revisited, which will happen eventually.
Wow.
I'm really excited for that, not gonna lie. Because when I reread the Marley arc that time, there was so much that I didn't really retain when I first read it. And something else I noticed when I went back was reading some of the volumes that released in English. The story up until then made a lot more sense and it flowed a lot better when you read it by a volume and you read it chapter after chapter. So going back and reading these arcs, I think is going to make me appreciate it even more potentially. Or maybe I'll find flaws. I don't know. But I know I appreciate the Marley arc more. So
Yeah, I remember that. I remember I was so happy to hear that you liked it so much. When we had that discussion about it.
yeah.
I remember a good friend of mine telling me, even as, another longtime friend, that all of this would be better in retrospect. And
Yeah.
like you were saying, reading it in the tankobon version is a totally different feel. When you pick up the book and read it, it just feels different. Things have different weight. The page layout makes a difference that you don't get that when you're reading it on, Read SNK or one of those. So I do think it would give a totally different vibe, and also be a much more enjoyable experience when there's not 30 days in between wondering what's going
Right.
to happen, to
Absolutely.
be able to just have everything fresh. So I think that would be fascinating.
Absolutely.
And I do think I was talking to Andrew about this when he's been going back and doing chapter discussions, and it's made him like the chapters better. Even ones that he's complained about that he didn't initially like, going back and reading them as part of a whole, and in retrospect has just made him a much more satisfied fan.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think it's unfair to kind of judge a chapter like on its own, because I see a lot of people do that all the time, and I do see it to an extent, but to criticize a chapter before knowing kind of like where it's at in the story as a whole, like you don't know what's coming after it, like things like that, I don't think that's fair a lot of the time. So yeah, I also definitely think a lot of people will probably view the series in a better light, upon rereading, or as a new time fan, just reading the whole thing faster than a chapter a month.
Speaking of, we're also gonna talk about the anime. 1 month is season 1 or whatever, and I think that'd be great. And I think seeing it all animated, yeah, there's a week wait in between, but still not as long as a month. So seeing it animated and week after week, I think that may help people digest the story better, or maybe they'll hate it even more. Who knows?
I'm very curious about that. Like, the ending was pretty much panned universally, and
Yeah.
I don't think that that's controversial at this point. I think, a lot of people liked it, but there were very few people that considered it an unequivocal success. And I do wonder, like, a lot of the people that have been the most vocal about it, will they watch the anime and will their opinions change? Will they like it better? Because I've heard nothing but praise for the Marley arc
Right.
being animated. And that's I remembered the chapter pull from those. People hated it, and people hated it at the time.
Yeah.
So I wonder how that's going to go down. I'm interested in seeing if people soften a little bit towards how it ended.
Absolutely. And it's like as you were saying, like the Marley arc when it started in the manga was largely disliked, right? But when season 4 started, even the very first episode, even before we had really gotten into the whole thing and gotten to know all these new characters, if I recall, like it was rated so highly on my anime list, for example. Like it became like one of the top rated anime shows on there after like just the very first episode. And obviously that doesn't have anything to do with the pacing or like the wait between chapters, because that was the first episode. But still, apparently the anime watchers seem to have liked that part of the story a whole lot more than the manga readers.
I wonder if after the Marley arc, or once it was happening, the fandom, maybe it kind of changed a little bit, at least who were the vocal voices in the fandom. I don't know, I mean, because obviously Jaegerist wasn't a thing until later.
That's for sure.
So I wonder if that kind of just appeared after the Marley arc as the story changed in that way. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how people accept it.
The people that came in during the Marley arc and that loved the Marley arc are, according to like my own mental processing. There are two types. It's the warrior stands and it's the Jaegerists. And like those two groups of the fandom were I don't want to say they were marginalized or whatever, but the warrior stands had never they were a small and persecuted group. Suddenly, Reiner was popular, and that was very cool, and so those friends were able to gain a little bit more exposure and be a little bit more vocal, and they were a little less persecuted. And then of course came the rise of the Jaegerists.
I love the way you put that.
Yeah.
It's true though, it's true.
It was a group of people who consume media completely differently than the way we had been consuming it all along, who are looking for different things, who are interested in different things. And it's like, I don't want to say it was like a wave of usurpers coming into the fandom, but it was definitely a new voice and a new audience that appeared.
Right.
And they didn't always mesh with the existing one. And I think that's what's so fun about fandom is that every time there's a new anime season, we get a new influx of people coming in with different needs and different wants. I mean, this season brought in a bunch of, I would say 15 to 17-year-olds who are new to anime, who are new to Attack on Titan, who were babies when the first season, and it shakes up fandom a little. I don't want to say it's in good ways or bad ways, but it definitely shakes things up.
Yeah.
Totally. And maybe it's just the anime only watchers are just more accepting of what's being brought to them because they don't have to wait as long between story moments, between the chapters. So maybe there's something to that, but I don't know. I agree with Peter. It's interesting to see how Pan the Marley arc was when it was coming out in the manga versus how praised it was in the anime, which I think it deserves the praise it gets by far. But it is very interesting to see that dynamic.
But I would say, too, that the manga readers who were panning it back then were praising it as well. So it just felt better in retrospect. And I wonder, for the manga readers, how the final, part 2 final season, if it will change any hearts.
Yeah,
Right.
maybe.
Definitely, yeah.
I think it will. I think some parts would be easier to stomach, like the Annie eating her pie. That pie will be easier to stomach.
Literally.
And we'll know what kind of pie it is. Was it a fruit or a meat pie? The big questions might be answered.
Oh my god.
Place your bets now on meat or fruit.
We'll be able to tell by the crumbs on her face. Yes.
So I think, yes, I think it's a good chance that people will be more open to how it ends. But I still think there would be a tinge of disappointment for maybe some plot points that people wanted more in depth on, personally. I mean, at least from what I see from everybody else, I've actually grown to really accept the ending and like it. I don't think it's amazing, but I do think it is unique in its own way, and at least I think it's satisfying to the extent that I can't wait to see it animated,
Well, yeah, you guys were pretty content with the ending, from what I recall.
Ultimately, yeah. Although it did take me a full day to kind of reach that.
I mean, we had to talk about a few things. I do think there were some things that were somewhat cryptic, but at the end of the day, I think we could say we were positive about it.
Overall, yes.
I think in time people will judge the series as a whole more than just based on the final chapter. I think the final chapter left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth.
Fair.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what the tankobon will be like, if it will just include like some sketches that didn't make the final cut, or if you will make some changes to the dialogue.
I wouldn't mind some changes to the dialogue just to make it a little less messy.
Same.
And maybe that's just on the English side. I haven't really I did see the panel where Armin is telling
Arigatou gozaimasu for genociding 80%.
Right. I did see that. I think there's a pause there. So anyway, I won't go into that. But I think that I would like to see the whole Japanese, or at the very least, I think part of it is that just the English didn't know how to translate some things. Like the line error I can't even remember what he says exactly. We'll make sure that your error doesn't go to waste or something. That's not
Yeah, no, it's basically that.
It's basically that. But the word error is not close enough. It's more like, I think it's close to mistake, but
Yeah, I feel like that's still like arguing semantics.
it is.
Perhaps.
It's true.
Like let's be real here. Like the whole context doesn't really change based on if we use a grave mistake or error. It's still weird and uncomfortable.
Right.
Well, and Isayama has fixed things before in the tankobon.
True.
But they don't make it into English. The English never
Oh,
gets
really?
fixed. So
What,
Oh,
really?
I didn't know that. What?
That's a shame.
But wait, the official translations that come online, like released chapter by chapter, they aren't always identical to the exact translations in the books that come out later.
No, that's true.
that's true. They do
Okay.
fix some of the typos. They definitely fix the typos. But I have not seen any instances where the changes that he's made in the Japanese tankobon have been reflected in the English one. I have. Maybe there have been.
Wait, so do you still have when they go to the basement that there's actual like electricity there, like a light bulb in your tankobon?
I wish I knew what chapter it was. I would check. I do know that like my tankobon refers to Hanji as she in one instance,
Ah, yeah.
which was supposed to be removed.
Gotcha.
So I want to look. I will look and see.
Actually, that's like volume 22, right? Or 21?
21, 22-ish, yeah.
Yeah.
Late 80s.
I'm pulling him out of my bookshelf right now.
Oh, you have it too.
Yep, of course.
Okay, who's faster? Let's make a bet, James.
Let's make it a race.
Flipping past Erwin, Diane.
Yeah,
It's
I
her.
just did it too.
Okay, here we go. I'm there.
Yeah, I'm there too.
No, it's a lamp.
Yeah. Well, I
Although,
wonder, man. It looks like, it definitely looks like a lamp.
I think mine still looks like electricity, but I'm not sure. We had so many theories on that. I wrote so many theories on
Really?
that.
Yeah, because you entered it. I
did.
can imagine if you like were left off on a chapter and all of a sudden like there's electricity in the basement.
Yeah, good point.
I wrote a crack theory that it was potato powered. You know how you can
Yeah.
make like potato lamps?
Yeah.
Right.
So I had this theory that Grisha's cart was filled with potatoes. It was a fun theory.
And that's how Sasha becomes a key role in the whole
Yes.
thing. She's the battery
Yes.
to power everything. Potato Girl.
It was my theory was that's why potatoes were so scarce, because Grisha's using like his undercover network to gather enough potatoes to electrify his basement.
Wow.
So instead of liberating humanity, we liberate the potatoes. Beautiful. I love
Exactly.
it.
Exactly. Because like remember the scene in the anime when Grisha's pulling the cart and I think the cart was covered, right? Like my theory was that it was filled with potatoes.
That's
It was
hilarious.
fun.
I love it.
But this
really
is what
cool.
you do when you have 30 days
Yeah,
to try to
exactly.
rationalize
Totally.
something.
Totally.
The anime onlys would never understand.
They miss out on all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps for the better.
And then the anime always like, we had 5 or 6 years of waiting for season 2. Don't give me that.
I know. What was kind of fun was when I first started watching the series, it was with my oldest daughter, of course, and my youngest would have been like permanently traumatized from it. So she, she knew about the series, and I would share bits of it with her, but it was way too violent. She was far too young. Well, guess what? She's not too young anymore. So
Sweet.
she has been, had been watching the anime, and about, I guess 3 weeks ago, decided to catch up on the manga as well. So she was reading
Perfect
it
timing, I
like one
guess.
chapter after another. Yes, she flew through the last 30 chapters
Wow.
so that she could read the final chapter with me. And we did that after every chapter. I'd be like, do you see that panel? Guess what people were talking about? And I was able to like share with her, what we were fixated on, what we were upset about, what our theories were that were later debunked. It was fun. It was really
Yeah.
fun doing that
Yeah.
with her.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, looking back in hindsight, that talking about the theories that other people had or we all had, like, yeah, it is fun to look back on that.
And speaking of that, it's fun that we've had our podcasts, and we've said all sorts of crazy things on on our episodes. And what I think is fun is just to have all of that archived, so we can always go back and see like how stupid was I in May of 2018, like for example.
I
like,
did that once for our 2-year anniversary. I went through all of our podcasts and wrote down everything that I thought was, funny or, every theory that we had
Oh yeah.
that didn't come true. Momtaku had a lot of fails, but I think I had the worst fails because
Oh.
I was not kind to Aaron, and then one chapter I was like, no, he's a good boy. I can see it. This is going to be all right. And then, of course, genocide happened like one chapter later or something. So,
I feel like I had the same reaction when he kind of he basically defies Zeke and then eventually tries to free Ymir. I felt like, yeah, this is the Aaron that we always knew. Like, this is it. Yeah. And then the rumbling happened. I was like, I'm so confused. Like, what is going on? And I think that's when we were thinking this could potentially be a, kind of him sacrificing himself. I think both Peter and I were saying that. Lack of a better word, the Lelouch ending, Code Geass ending.
Right.
Real quick about that.
Uh-huh.
Code Geass is not the first one to do that. No. I can't name off the top of my head, but it's not. It's a story trope.
It's probably the most popular one.
Yeah, that's fair. At least, especially in anime.
I just gotta say though that I don't think it's fair to compare Attack on Titan's ending to that, because it's not even that similar. If I'm not mistaken, Lelouch in Code Geass succeeded in uniting the world through his own sacrifice, whereas Eren didn't at all. Like, the world is still just as divided after his sacrifice.
But that wasn't his goal, to divide.
It was true. It wasn't his goal, but still, he did fail, and he didn't get that kind of ending.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you think Eren failed? Because I think Eren got everything he wanted except for Mikasa.
He failed in I think
Sorry.
I think he had two goals. Ultimately, like with the rumbling anyway. Like not like just kind of putting Mikasa aside for a while. He had two goals. One of them was the Lelouch ending, which he wanted to reunite the world against him to make it so that everyone could be get along somehow, having him as a shared enemy. He failed at that. However, he succeeded in erasing the Titan curse, because that was also another part of his plan.
I agree with that. Like, it was kind of a two goals kind of a plan. I mean, at the very least, he was trying to get Armin and company to be the spokespersons, the kind of heroes that's defeated the Titans. I think that was part of his goal as well. So you could even say he succeeded in that.
True.
But anyway, I do agree with you that it's different enough that the comparisons that they get, I think, are just overblown because people are upset that he didn't actually rumble the world. Or, well, he did. He did, but
right.
that he didn't, go home to Historia after killing humanity and whatever,
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. I'm still salty about that.
Oh, I know.
James, you'll love this. I don't know if you saw the chapter poll, but the chapter poll, we described ANR, the ANR ending, the Requiem ending, as Eren kills his friends or something. I forget how we worded it, because of his wife and child, or for the benefit of his wife and child. Just like a one sentence, how do you define ANR in one sentence? And on Titan Folk, the poll got 700 comments this month.
Oh.
And most of those were people saying that we were biased against Requiem and presenting it in a bad light because of the way we worded that.
What?
And I'm like,
but that's exactly what people...
You...
Oh, my word.
That's exactly what it was. And they were like,
God.
well, that's what people say to make it look bad. And it was literally hundreds of comments about our bias making Requiem sound worse than it was.
Can I get like a link to that thread?
I would absolutely give you a link to that.
Oh my God.
I'll pull it up. I will pull it up right now and drop it in the chat.
Yes, please.
I mean, to say it any other way would would actually show you're biased either way. So if you were to say he goes back and he's distraught about what he did, but he knew it was the right thing, like that would just show how much of a fan you are of it, of that theory. Like that would be biased. But if you were to go and say like, add lines like stupid or silly or I don't know, something else, adjectives to show you're biased, then I could see their argument. But that's just straight up facts what you said about that theory.
Yeah.
Let me read it to you. So somebody quoted us. We described ANR. And again, we had to do very short descriptions because it's a poll. Mm-hmm. I think the question was like, what theory are you most disappointed didn't happen? And one of them we said was Eren killing everybody for his wife and child. which I think is a pretty fair description of A&R.
Yeah.
And
I
these
think
are the
it is.
replies. Oh boy, I can already smell the bias. Yeah, that's a pretty bad description of A&R. Indeed. Feels like a common straw man used to criticize A&R back in the day.
I'm pretty sure it's the same people who called us delusional and old fans who lost touch with the series when we said Hisu Eren was not going to be a thing.
Yeah, these are the same people. I mean, people will see what they want and complain about what they want. It is what it is. But I don't think there's anything wrong with what you said whatsoever.
Well, I don't either. And
No.
I will say that, like, a lot of people thought we were biased in the other direction, that we were, so anytime we get accused of being biased from both sides, then I know we've done a good job.
Exactly.
And we were accused from both sides of the poll being very biased,
Wow.
both positively and negatively. So I'm like, we did good. We did good.
Yeah, you definitely did. Huh. Moving on. Obviously, we don't know exactly what Isayama has planned for the future, if he's going to write something else, when that's going to happen, if it happens. But how excited are you all for any potential future manga made by him?
I mean, had you asked me during the Marley arc, very excited, but at this point I'm like, nah, I'm good. Because I feel, I don't mean this in a bad way, but everything that I personally enjoyed the most in this series has kind of not been present in the final arc. So
That's fair.
if he goes back to the way he originally wrote and like how he conveyed characters' emotions, great. If it's dark humor plus romance, then no, I'm out. Definitely not.
Oh, I would probably eat that up though if it was just dark humor and romance. But I definitely see what you mean though. Like I don't think the Marley arc was ever topped. Like I am with you there.
But even before that, like, the character interactions were, and the emotions they conveyed, it felt real, it felt human. Like, this was the first series that I really felt like, these weren't like kids trying to, rule the world. No, these were kids being scared and dying and, all the terrible stuff that comes with that.
Oh yeah.
So, which, yeah, for a shonen was innovative, I'd say.
Oh yeah, totally.
So, but I would love to visit Hisana.
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I would totally go
That'd be
there.
nice.
Yeah. But how about you, Momtaku?
I will definitely check it out. I mean, no matter how the story failed, I feel a lot like you do, Petter, in that he's given me some of my favorite characters across all forms of literature. Like his talent lies in character creation. I share Luna's concern in the dark comedy aspect. I think the comedy aspects, the deliberate comedy aspects of Attack on Titan were my least favorite part. Some of the funny characters I enjoyed, but when he tried to show a little bit of a twisted humor, I think about the like the bonus pages that were where he was really allowed to kind of do what he wanted. I never enjoyed those. The one with Armin and do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Like, if that's the style he's going to go for, I could stomach 3 pages of that at the end of every volume, but I could not stomach entire manga volumes of that. Yeah, so I definitely will check it out. And I know, like, when Full Metal Alchemist ended, I went and read everything that Arakawa put out next.
Yeah.
And, there was definitely, there's a lot of fun in, like, your favorite author doing something new.
Yeah.
Did you read Silver Spoon?
I did, but it went on hiatus like 3 times, right?
Yeah.
Did it ever finish, or is it still
did.
on hiatus?
It did. It finished.
Oh,
Yeah, you should go. You should finish it. It's very sweet.
I will. Yeah, so I was really into that one because it was, to me, it was like, okay, now you have, not that they're similar, but one running away from his daddy. I mean, I guess they're both kids running away from their
Yeah.
father problems. But rather than, running to a mess dress and joining the military, this guy goes to a farm. And I thought it was like laugh out loud funny. I thought it was a brilliant love letter to her childhood in agricultural Japan.
So great. Having actually lived in that area of Japan, it was really great to see that aspect kind of in a slice of life. So I think it would be really refreshing to see Isayama cover something different and potentially a new genre. And touching on those ending chapters, or not ending, the ending pages of the volumes, I really enjoyed them. I see what you're saying, that if it was chapters on chapters of that same type of story beat and pacing, it would be a little obnoxious. But I do think that he made it that obnoxious because it is kind of in dark contrast to what was happening in the actual volume. I think it would be a bit toned down in its absurdity in a way if he were to go in that direction. And personally, I really loved his comedy moments in Attack on Titan. You know, Annie eating the pie. Even later when Annie and Mikasa are talking about the okapi, I love that moment too. And the potato, Sasha with the potato. I mean, that was basically the same thing as the pie moment. I don't understand why people love Sasha and the potato, but oh no, Annie eats a piece of pie. Have mercy. You know, it doesn't make sense to me. I feel like it's been consistent, and that's my take.
I mean, no pie is that good that I'm gonna ignore genocide going on in the background. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, what are they supposed to do? Like, you know, sprout wings and go over there? Oh wait, they did that.
Yeah, I know. The problem with the pie scene is that all the build up to the character's fear of seeing Annie, there was no payoff on that. Armin was terrified of seeing Annie, and then, you know, we as a fandom were anxious to see her again. And I guess, you know, some people might like the fact that he punted on all the drama and went with a comedic moment, but you know, like so many other moments, sometimes the humor feels tone deaf.
You know, at the same time, that wasn't the first time we saw Annie out of the crystals. We had her moment with Hitch, and so that was her kind of understanding what was going on.
That was brilliant.
I thought that was pretty good. And so
yeah,
having that moment between Annie and Armin, or at least, you know, see that's how she's introduced back into play. I felt like it worked. I mean, yeah, he could have gone with a more serious thing, but I don't think the story has been always serious all the time. I mean, even in a serious stories like Attack on Titan, you can still have these comedic moments, just like in real life.
I mean, there's always been poop jokes and ass jokes ever since the first arc.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some of them hit better than others.
Like Levi and Zeke, like talking about shit in various ways. I love that. Every time it makes me laugh. And Reiner making ass jokes. Like, I adore that. So if that's where Isayama wants to go with his next story, I mean, I would definitely read that.
So at the very least, I'm very open to what he has coming up next, and I think he could do a good job. It won't be on the same level as Attack on Titan. I mean, if it is,
you never know.
I think that's, you know, I mean, that's the sign of somewhat of a master writer, in my opinion. If you can make two masterpieces like that.
I'm excited for whatever comes, and I will I will give it the benefit of the doubt before ever seeing it, just because I think he's earned it.
Yeah.
And no matter if the ending, you know, in my estimation, the series ended with a 7 and not a 10, but the series as a whole is still a 9 or a 10.
Yeah.
So
that's fair.
He definitely has earned it, and he's given me characters that I will think about the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, I do think, even though, you know, we might not love every single part of his work, I do think all of us still have a lot to thank him for through Attack on Titan. And even if we're not talking about the story itself, you know, the fandom that was spawned out of his creation, you know, all of us four would have never been interacting probably if it wasn't for Hajime Isayama.
It's true.
Absolutely. It was the friends we made along the way. I mean,
yeah.
And I probably touched on this during ours, but like I credit this series with not just a worldwide, like a global friend community, but self-confidence, learning how to write, learning how to read, learning how to debate. I mean, all sorts of activities that I would not have done outside of this fandom.
Absolutely. Yeah. Any other closing thoughts before we round off the episode?
Nope.
I guess not. All right, then. Well, then, be sure to follow YouHearBigGirls on Twitter or their YouTube channel, or listen to their stuff on the podcast apps or whatever. Always good stuff. And you can also follow us on Twitter at Umami Manga. And if you like this episode, please share it around with anyone you think might enjoy it too. Thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you next time, where James and I will talk about our favorite characters in Attack on Titan. Bye-bye.
Oh boy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
That was fun.
Yeah, that went well, I think, too.
And we did it in 2 hours.
Exactly, yeah. I'm happy about that.